All right, I want you to meet Elle. She is in her mid-20s and loves mid-20-year-old things. Iced macchiatos, Bad Bunny, her 2 mischievous cats, and she is a PhD student here in Milwaukee. Pretty normal stuff, right? I mean, outside of the PhD, which is just more impressive than normal, but otherwise pretty normal. Well, almost.
I think citizenship has just always been something that's so interesting because it's like people can't see it. True to like living in the shadows, or it's just something that people don't really talk about, or oftentimes like the assumption is like you are a US citizen.
Elle is also undocumented, and that's why we're not using her full name.
So I definitely feel like, yeah, it was very silencing because even if I did explain that I wasn't a US citizen, I feel like people couldn't wrap their head around how that even worked, which is so interesting because it's the US.
We've been looking into different pathways to citizenship here, but what happens when there is no path?
I feel like I struggled a lot with trying to find my place because I felt like I had to be perfect and I had to prove that I was worthy, but you don't have to prove that you are worthy because you are worthy.
I'm Jimmy Gutierrez. This is Status Pending, a podcast from WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. Here we look at how our immigration system works and doesn't, and the impact it has on the people going through it. Today, we are looking at what options there are for someone with big dreams but little help and no clear path forward. Reporter Xgrid Nunez takes it from here.
Elle has lived in the U.S. since she was 5 years old. Before that, she and her family lived comfortable lives in Monterrey, Mexico. Her dad was a manager of a graphic design company, and her mom was in school to become a hairdresser. But as violence between Mexico's drug cartels escalated, Elle says her parents became worried about their safety and decided to move to the U.S. in the early 2000s.
My parents wanted to give us a better life, and they sacrificed the life we had back in Mexico in order for me and my siblings to have a better life and a shot at the American dream, or what we thought of as the American dream.
Elle's family, her mom, dad, 2 older brothers, and Elle, traveled to the U.S. legally on tourist visas. They took a bus ride that would change the rest of their lives. Her family settled in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and eventually overstayed their visas. Elle says life in the U.S. felt almost like a downgrade. One of her earliest memories here was going to work with her mom at a hair salon. It instilled a level of fear that stayed with her as she grew up in America.
I remember there'd be instances where she would be cutting people's hair and she didn't know how to speak the language. And then people would say really mean things to her, just really racist things and call her dumb and call her names. And it filled me with so much rage that someone thought that they could talk to my mom like that. I think it was such a shock because it's my mom. No, she will speak. She has words to say. But I think at that age, it's such a weird thing to reconcile because I didn't fully understand all the intricacies into the power structure.
After her dad found out about the way her mom was treated, her mom stopped working at the salon. He wanted to keep her safe.
And I think that's the immigrant dilemma. And we have our parents that come from, in some cases, actually being humanized in Mexico. And here, it's the opposite because they don't know the language.
Growing up, Elle says her parents would ask her not to speak Spanish in public, not even in the grocery store. She didn't understand when she was 5 years old, but she gets it now. Her family didn't want to get outed as undocumented.
It was hard growing up like that because the political climate was very much similar to how it is now, where you're hiding your identity. And I have the privilege of being white passing. So my parents very much just wanted me to not let anyone know that we had just moved here, that we were immigrants, just very fearful. So I remember it was almost living a double life. I know a lot of immigrants will call it Hannah Montana.
She felt caught between 2 identities. At home, she could speak Spanish and be herself. And at school, she only spoke English and tried to fit in.
I just almost feel I'm not Mexican enough. But then, of course, I feel that I'm not American enough. And I think that was something I really struggled with.
Growing up like this made her feel silenced, fearful, and resentful of this country that prides itself on being built by immigrants. For years, she says she let the term illegal immigrant define her, but not anymore. Elle came to the U.S. as a child, so you might think she's the perfect candidate for DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. But getting DACA status was more complicated than you might think. It's an Obama-era policy that allowed certain immigrants who were brought to the U.S. as children to apply for temporary permission to live and work here. Protections last for 2 years and have to be renewed. Here's President Obama in 2012.
Now, let's be clear. This is not amnesty. This is not immunity. This is not a path to citizenship. It's not a permanent fix.
DACA was essentially a Band-Aid for U.S. immigration policy 13 years ago. Obama created it because time and time again, Congress couldn't agree on permanent legislation to protect young immigrants. Elle remembers the moment when she and her family learned about DACA and what it would mean for her older brothers, who were old enough to qualify for it.
My family's not really an emotional bunch. I think it just comes with the territory of being first gen. But I just remember crying because I think it was just really exciting that they would be able to not have to work construction because that's what they were going to do. It's crazy because I have such a love-hate relationship with DACA in the sense of it's never going to be enough. And then they expect us to be super grateful over it. But it allowed my brothers to live the life that they want to live, which is just really exciting.
And it was exciting for Elle too. But her plans to apply for DACA became uncertain when Donald Trump was elected in 2016. She says it was a time similar to now where a lot of undocumented folks feared sharing any information that the Trump administration could use against them. So she met with a lawyer to ask about DACA. It didn't go as expected.
So I had a bad lawyer and she told me to not apply. She told me that I should try going back to Mexico and then coming back in again and doing a student visa. And I just remember it's so funny because I was there with my dad and we were sitting there. I mean, me and my dad are very similar. So in our heads, we're just no, but we're cordial, nice people. So we will, nod. But I don't know, it was extra hurtful because she was basically telling me to go back and try again. But we ended up not filing.
Elle knows now that was bad advice. But at the time, she and her family decided it was too risky for her to apply for DACA. Fast forward to the first day of Joe Biden's presidency in 2021, he signed a memorandum to preserve DACA after Trump unsuccessfully tried to end it. Elle says she immediately applied for DACA, and things started looking up.
So I pretty much finished the process and got all the way past my biometrics appointment. So I remember one of my brothers who has DACA, he drove me to the USCIS building to do my biometrics appointment. But yeah, my brothers were super excited for me to get DACA.
A biometrics appointment is where immigration officials collect fingerprints, a photo, and a signature to run background checks. It's the last step to complete in the DACA application process. Weeks passed, and judging from her brother's experience, Elle says she was expecting to hear back any day on her application. But at the time, it was one of thousands waiting for approval.
It was that same week that President Biden appointed more people to oversee applications because there was such a big backlog. And then that same week, the judge in Texas ended up blocking DACA.
On July 16, 2021, a federal judge in Texas ruled that the DACA program is unlawful and blocked new applicants nationwide, which included Elle. She was so close to having some sort of protection as an immigrant.
But it definitely was hard because I remember seeing that the judge had blocked it. And I remember not even being able to cry because it was almost one of those things where it's yeah, it was almost of course that would happen. So I definitely think I didn't process that one for a long time.
It was another moment where the country she spent most of her life told her she couldn't do something. As an undocumented person without legal status, Elle can't get a driver's license, so she takes the bus everywhere. She also can't apply for a work permit. Those are just some of the basic things she can't access. And of course, there's the fear of deportation. So Elle missed the window to qualify for DACA. What other options does she have to legally live in the U.S.? Well, one of the things you should know about Elle is that she's from a mixed status family. She and her parents are undocumented, and her older brothers have DACA, but her younger brother, who's 19, is a U.S. citizen. He was born here. He could petition for Elle to get a green card once he turns 21. But it's not quick. The process can take decades and cost thousands of dollars. Melissa Soborowski is an immigration lawyer in Milwaukee. She says outdated immigration laws make the family member green card process even longer, especially for siblings and people from certain countries.
A lot of this legislation was designed in the late 90s. So they created legislation that looked at both the volume of immigrants coming from very specific countries, and they were creating quotas based off that time period. There are 3 countries that are restricted by that, and that is India, China, and Mexico. And so for the great majority of my client base, most of which come from Mexico, I have to sit down with them and explain the reality that, yes, you can petition for your sibling. However, we're realistically looking at a 10 or 20-year time frame before they can move past your petition to getting their residency.
Not only is this timeline a huge challenge, but Elle says she never really considered this option. She's always seen it as a priority for her youngest brother to petition for residency for their parents first. Another route that Elle could possibly take is to apply for a green card through marriage. But she's not really about that, and it's financially out of reach for her.
I think it's hard because, like, part of me is like, I don't need a man. But, like, the only other reality would be, like, if I were to get married. But even then, that's, like, a complex process. So, like, I know a friend who just got married, and I think you're looking at least, like, $15K and, like, lawyer fees and just, like, all, like, different things you have to do. I think, like, people don't understand, like, how complicated it is, but also, like, just how non-accessible it is money-wise. Like, there's, like, so many things that go into it.
Even if Elle did follow that route, Soborowski says the Trump administration has made the green card process even more difficult than usual.
I'll be honest, as somebody who does this day in and day out, things are narrowing. This administration is not necessarily able to change or close up options altogether, but they are making it difficult on all different kinds of fronts. For example, creating extra burdens to people becoming citizens by requiring extra evidence, even though they've never been arrested for a crime. They now have to go above and beyond to show their good moral character. So there's a great feeling of things narrowing and becoming more difficult.
So that leaves Elle with no good options to change her immigration status. It's something Soborowski comes across a lot, especially with people Elle's age.
That happens to me, unfortunately, on a regular basis. It's hard to tell somebody, but I like to do it with dignity, face to face, and explain what I screened for, what the limitations are under the law, and then I welcome them to return if we do have immigration reform or if something in their life changes. But that does mean there's that emotional toll of meeting with people and giving them the stark reality that there is nothing available to them at the moment.
Elle's just had to cope with this reality.
I've never been jealous about my brothers having DACA or my little brother being a U.S. citizen. I think, like, just, like, the way, like, my parents raised me, I'm really a firm believer of, like, you play the cards you were dealt with. And, like, some people have better cards than others, and you kind of just have to make what you can out of it.
Elle hasn't let her immigration status stop her from getting an education, even though it's made it more complicated. Going to college is something Elle is incredibly passionate about. She says it's her way of rebelling against this country that has made her feel unwanted.
As an immigrant growing up in the U.S., I think that that's, like, always been with me, and why I am so passionate and motivated when it comes to education is because, like, no one can take my education away, and I feel like that's, like, my one thing that I have for me.
Undocumented students, including DACA recipients, don't qualify for federal student aid, which is a way most students at public universities access federal loans, work-study, and Pell Grants.
I never got excited about an acceptance letter. Like, as sad as, like, that sounds, because, like, I always knew, like, the biggest challenge would be when it came to, like, paying.
That means private universities are sometimes a more accessible option for undocumented folks. They have more flexibility with their tuition options and scholarship awards. And in Elle's case, she earned a full-ride tuition scholarship for her bachelor's degree at a private university. Her parents helped pay for any gaps she couldn't cover, like books and fees.
I was able to get scholarships, but that required like a lot of advocacy. And I really like don't know how I had the energy to do it. But of course, like that also makes me think about like all the students who don't advocate for themselves.
It wasn't an easy transition. Elle says she struggled with her mental health since she was a teenager, but it especially started weighing on her during her undergrad.
I really struggle with like depression and like anxiety and like PTSD, and my depression is like high functioning, so I feel like it adds like that similar layer to like citizenship. It's like an invisible kind of weight.
She says being an undocumented student on campus felt isolating.
It's really hard to relate with your peers on the impending like gloom of like deportation like weighing on you, or like thinking about like your parents, or just kind of like always having to kind of have in the back of your head like this anxiety.
Elle was eventually able to find help through a therapist at a community health center. She also found a community of undocumented students on campus. They support each other. College was difficult, but over time, Elle felt empowered. She started learning about Latinx history and sociology and began to question America's legal and societal systems.
It made me stop thinking that I was like asking for more than I deserved, and it made me start seeing that I was just like scratching the surface of like what I could advocate for.
As Elle finished up her undergraduate degree, she began to worry about what the future might hold next for her. But one thing was certain. She wanted to do something to support undocumented students like herself in higher education. Her professor suggested a master's degree.
That meant a lot for me because like I didn't even think about postgrad. I think just like the nature of being an immigrant is just, I always like think like in the now. Not that I live in the moment, because I feel like I always live in my head because I'm always like thinking of what's next. But I just don't like seeing that far ahead when like a 9-digit social security code is like the one thing that's standing in between you and like your dreams. It can be really hard.
But Elle quickly hit a roadblock. The master's program required her to take on an assistantship, which is a paid position like a teaching assistant. But that required work authorization, which she doesn't have. So she looked for advice and found a workaround, where instead of getting paid hourly for work, she would be given a stipend to support her research. Instead of an assistantship, it would be called a fellowship. Elle pitched the idea to her university.
I was lucky enough that they converted their assistantship into a fellowship, and that's how I was able to go to grad school and then now be in my first year of my PhD program. But very much I would say like using all the skills I learned by being undocumented, like being resourceful and like asking questions, has gotten me so far.
Without that change, she wouldn't have been able to go beyond a bachelor's degree. After that, her university created a fellowship for undocumented undergraduate students, so they have access to the same opportunities as their peers. That means the path that Elle created for herself as an undocumented student can help others too.
I feel like it was meant to be that I didn't get DACA, and then I was able to ask these questions for future undocumented students and kind of be able to create resources, kind of knowing like what I wasn't able to attain. I don't know, I just want undocumented students to be able to have like a good experience in college, or as much of a quote-unquote normal experience as possible.
After Elle earned her master's degree, she decided to work towards an education-related PhD. There is a possibility that DACA could reopen for new applicants like Elle. In 2025, a federal court ruled the program could continue in most states, including Wisconsin. But the government hasn't started processing new applications yet, and it's unclear if it will. At the same time, the Trump administration has arrested and deported some DACA recipients since taking office. Elle is determined to not let the fear of deportation debilitate her, even though the weight of it has grown with Trump in office.
This is motivating me almost in the same sense that like what motivated me in the beginning, which was just like, you think that we can't do all these things and like be in these spaces and in these places, but like, no, we can, and like we will be loud. And I think just tapping more like into that, like unafraid and unapologetic.
She's channeling her determination into the work she's doing in the first year of her PhD program by highlighting undocumented voices in her research. She says she hopes to open a Dreamer Center in Wisconsin one day to provide the support for undocumented students and families that she wishes she had. And Elle doesn't dwell on not having DACA or a direct path to citizenship, but she recognizes what having legal status could mean for her.
It means access. That's all really citizenship means to me in the context of like America. Because it is crazy, really. If you think about like, it really is like a 9-digit code. Obviously, like there's complexities to it, but when you boil it down, like that is what's keeping me from having access to like a lot of things. It's hard when you grow up hearing people like say you're not like American, you know, and then you like internalize it, and then now you're just kind of very like distant from it. I know it's hard because I feel like sometimes I can already like hear, then why don't you just go back if you don't like it this much? And it's, you know what I mean? Like, but I also think like you're allowed to criticize the country you love. I just think it needs a lot of help.
In the past, Elle has been afraid to think about the future. She knows nothing in life is promised, but she's trying to let herself dream.
That was reporter Excret Nunez. Status Pending is produced by WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR, part of the NPR network. Our team includes
Audrey Nowakowski,
Excret Nunez,
Emily Files,
Catherine Kokel,
Maria Peralta Arellano,
Valeria Navarro Villegas,
Samia Said,
and me, Jimmy Gutierrez. Editorial support from Michelle Maternowski and Annalise Hensel. Design support from Aaron Bagata. Music in this episode is from Blue Dot Sessions. You can still subscribe to the Status Pending podcast for more stories of people in Wisconsin navigating the U.S. immigration system.